Well, you liked it so much last week, I figured why not do it again. We back outside. What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, and welcome to week 14 of my weekly CFL football pick show for the 2025 CFL season, and off of a very exciting Labor Day weekend, but a little less predictable than maybe we would have liked. So only went 5-4 over Labor Day weekend. Interestingly enough, 3 of those 5 wins came on the totals. I swept the totals in the games last week, which is how you really know last week was a little bizarro world, because that's not a thing that I do. I only went 1-2 straight up and 1-2 against the spread, but man, 3-0 on those totals means for the first time all season, I'm above 500 on the totals. So we are truly entering unprecedented times. Back to a full 17 games over 500 on the season at 83-66-1, 32-18 straight up, couple games over 500 against the spread, and again, over 500 now on the totals. So we're definitely in a place that we're happy with, but we keep wanting to drive for more. Very solid week last week in CFL Fantasy as well. 122.3 points, puts me at 1506.9 on the season, an average of just under 116 in total. I did fall 5 places overall in CFL Fantasy down to 308 from 303, which I was coming into last week. Top 500, I'm 27 points inside the top 500, which is good, and I'm only like 12 or 13 points out of the top 250. That's how bunched up everybody is in the top 500 or so this season. So everybody's really, really close. So one really good week and you shoot right up the rankings. CFL Central, the Fantasy Football League, I did drop 7 places down to 47th overall. Now 1,350 teams in that league. In Christina Costabile's league, I'm still 25th out of 375. No change from last week. And shout out to my Week 13 Labor Day weekend MVP, which was Hamilton quarterback Bo Levi Mitchell. Put up 405 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. Good for 26 points with the 2 times captain multiplier. So he put up a big 52 for me last week. Once again, I'm hoping everyone's enjoying the ambient noise of a Wednesday morning in Bridgewater, Nova Scotia. We are going to take a look at this Week 14 slate of games, back to 4 games. But again, this is going to be another week that's going to be a little weird because you got 3 teams coming off the bye. Things aren't really going to kind of get back to normal until next week, which is also part of why I thought, let's just do another episode out on the deck, because why not? The BC Lions and the Ottawa REDBLACKS are going to play each other in Ottawa, both of those teams coming off of their bye. Hamilton is in Montreal taking on the Ticats, and then we end the week with a pair of rematches from last week in the opposite venue. So we've got now Saski in Winnipeg. Get your banjos warmed up. It's the Banjo Bowl in Winnipeg, and Calgary is in Edmonton in a rematch from their Labor Day Classic. The Argos are on bye this week, and only adding to the chaos and confusion, 3 of the 4 games feature a home dog. So why don't we get started with that BC-Ottawa game? The Lions lose in Toronto their last time out. Of course, that was a couple of weeks ago, allowing 52 points to the Argos, which included 443 yards passing and a 3-touchdown performance from Nick Arbuckle, who absolutely shredded the Lions secondary in that game. The REDBLACKS have now dropped 2 straight games. Those were games in Winnipeg and then against Edmonton, and that game was in Ottawa. And the health of Drew Brown, once again, heavily leads the storylines when it comes to the Ottawa REDBLACKS, and I think really caps what they're able to do on offense versus, whether it's Drew Brown in there or whether it's somebody else. This game has some really interesting playoff implications, and it's weird to talk about that in Week 14, but I mean, these 2 teams are both in 4th place in their respective divisions, but BC, the crossover here is very alive for the Lions, whereas for Ottawa, it's all but off the table. Ottawa's got 7 games left. They're 2 points behind Toronto. Right now, I think they're like 6 points behind in a potential crossover scenario, so the crossover is not really realistic for them. It's very much on the table for BC. That kind of makes this some of these games are going to start being do or die here for the REDBLACKS. Nathan Rourke this week will be looking for his 6th game in his last 7 of at least 325 passing yards and multiple passing scores. I do think he gets that this week. I'm pretty heavy on the BC Lions in this game. Let's take BC on the road in Ottawa to beat a REDBLACKS team that has only won 1 game at home so far this year. On the line, the REDBLACKS are taking plus 4.5 here as a pretty solid home dog. 4.5 points, I think the margin there is just too thin when you've got a high-potency, high-powered offense like BC. I don't think Ottawa's defense is the one to keep this game within a touchdown. So let's go ahead and lay the minus 4.5 here on BC. I feel pretty good about that number. Total in the game set at 55.5. It is the biggest total of the week this week. I actually think this stays under because I don't know what I'm going to get from Ottawa's offense. It's not that I have a ton of faith in BC's defense, because I don't, certainly not after that last game. And it's not that I don't think BC's going to score plenty of points, because I think they will. But what we actually get from Ottawa, the viability there and the range of outcomes there for Ottawa is what I was trying to say, I think is just too strong there. So for the biggest total of the week, I think I got to skew under on it. Let's stay under the 55.5 point total in BC. Ottawa, let's go like a 33 to 20, something like that. Let's go 33 to 20. Lions win, Lions cover, and give me an under on that 55.5 point total. Up next, the Ticats are in Montreal. The Ticats, losers of 3 straight games, officially hitting a full-on skid. And speaking of skids, Montreal has lost 4 straight games, but at least they're coming into this game off their bye. Like I say, the Ticats have definitely hit a slump, losers of 3 straight games, and over their last 5 have allowed 162 points in those last 5 games. It's pretty tough to win games when you're giving up, 32 points a game, something like that. It's tough to win with it. Now, Hamilton's offense can outscore that pace, but shouldn't be relied on to do it every single time. As I said, the Alouettes are off their bye, losers of 4 straight games, scoring just 59 points in that span, so only averaging about 15 points a game are the Owls, and it's certainly not going to help them on the defensive side that Bo Levi Mitchell is coming off of a dominant performance in that losing effort last week, which I just talked about with my fantasy roster, but a negligible run game last week, which is kind of an outlier for the Ticats this year, but they only carried the ball 8 times for 25 yards as a team. The Alouettes quarterback carousel continues, and you have to assume this week they're going to be rolling out some combination of Cameron Dukes, Shea Patterson, or James Morgan, who got the start last week. And if that's the case, we've got the Alouettes holding on for dear life here in the East Division. They've lost the East Division lead to Hamilton, although Hamilton has not done a lot over these last 3 weeks to really make them pay for that. But like I say, losers of 4 straight. Davis Alexander cannot get back quickly enough. There was some rumor that it might be this week, but it's not really looking like that. He's still limited in practice. It's soft tissue. They got to be careful with it. So I would be very surprised if it was Davis Alexander this week. So once again, Owls are kind of holding on for dear life here, and I don't think it gets any easier this week. Give me the Ticats on the road in Montreal to get the win over the Alouettes. The Owls have only won 2 home games this season overall, and Hamilton has won 4 of their 5 games against the East Division. So I feel pretty good about the Ticats getting the dub here. We have a dog audience for the rest of this pick. On the line, Montreal is taking plus 3.5. I'm surprised that the number is this small, given the uncertainty at the most important position. I mean, I got to lay Hamilton minus 3.5 there because for all I know, this could be a multi-possession blowout. So let's take the Ticats minus the 3.5 points. Total in the game set at 51.5. I am actually going to go with an over in this one, and it's because I think the Ticats are really going to flex their muscle on the offensive side. So let's go ahead and take an over here because I think it's just so tough, especially with the way the Ticats defense has been playing lately. I think it's going to be so tough for them to keep this number under the 51.5 points. So let's go over this 51.5 point total, not by a ton, but we're going to go over anyway. We got a truck there in the background. Let's go 37-17 in favor of the Ticats. So Ticats win. They cover the minus 3.5. Give me an over on the 51.5 points. All right, it is rematch time. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers playing host to the Saskatchewan Roughriders in the 2025 Banjo Bowl. Fire up those banjos, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be the 8th consecutive game for the Blue Bombers since they've got a chance for a bye, with no end in sight because they've still got multiple games yet to play. Winnipeg is 4-1 at home this year, so they've certainly had better results in their own building than they've had away from it. The Riders extending their record on the season to 9-2 with that win last week. Again, highly entertaining Labor Day weekend game. The Riders win that game 34-30, despite the Bombers scoring 13 points in the final 6 minutes of that game to really make it interesting and just make that Bombers +5 hit, which just made me feel oh so good last week against the spread. We got an interesting story here. It's a dichotomy of two quarterbacks kind of going in different directions. Zach Collaros has been heating up over the last couple of weeks. His last 2 games, he is 53 of 68, 589 yards passing, 4 touchdowns and a pick. That's pretty good numbers given what Collaros was doing earlier in the season. Contrast that with Trevor Harris, who has not been asked to do nearly as much, but even in what he's not being asked to do, we're seeing his numbers kind of in decline from what they were earlier in the season. His last 2 games, 32 of 50, 64%, that's fine. 424 yards passing in 2 games. Not all that great, honestly, and 3 touchdowns to 2 picks. So you're seeing his pass volume go down, but his interception percentage come way up from what it has been earlier in the season. So again, just 2 quarterbacks, I think, kind of going in different directions. There's no other game on the CFL regular season slate where bouncing back from a loss in the previous week is more important than this one, given the status of the rivalry between these two teams. So with a bounce back idea in mind, I'm going to take the Bombers here. And look, I know I took them last week, and I certainly thought they were going to win that game. And boy, for a little bit, it looked like they might just come back and do it. It's taking nothing away from the Riders. It's really, really not. But now, especially in the context where the Bombers lost last week, they're going to be so hungry to win this game. I think hungrier than the other side to win this game. So give me the Bombers at home to get the win over the Riders. Against the spread, Winnipeg is laying a single point, so obviously I'm going to go ahead and lay that point right along with them. Total in the game, 52.5 points. I do think this goes over. I just think it's 2 teams that want to put up a ton of points on the other, and it's not that they don't have good defenses, but I think it's just going to be another kind of offensive outburst. Maybe it takes some late game heroics like we saw last week, but give me an over on the 52.5 point total. I am going to go, let's see, I want to go 33-27. 33-27. I think this game gets to a 60. So 33-27 in favor of the Blue Bombers. Bombers win, Bombers cover, over on the point total. And the last game, of course, is the rematch from the Labor Day game last week. The Calgary Stampeders in Edmonton taking on the Elks. Such a dichotomy with these two teams versus how they've performed against division opponents. Calgary 6-0 against the West Division so far this season. Edmonton 0-5. This is going to be Edmonton's 7th consecutive game since their bye, and that may have been reflected a little bit last week in what was a pretty one-sided Labor Day Classic, a 3-possession win for the Stampeders, who win that game 28-7 in Calgary. The Stamps last week scoring majors on the ground, through the air, and even with a punt return touchdown from Brooks in that game. Those were the 3 touchdowns that Calgary scored. So again, pretty balanced scoring. You get it in the pass game, you get it in the run game, you get it in special teams too. All it was kind of missing was that defensive score that really would have put the exclamation point on things. 328 scoreless Edmonton Elks total yards in that game that only equated to 2 field goals being kicked as well as a single. This is shaping up to be another defensive battle for sure. And look, the Stamps, who are winners of 3 straight games, really orchestrated a pretty solid defensive effort there last week. Neither one of these teams topping 360 total yards before you take out sack yardage. So again, 360 total for neither team. It was tough to get yardage, tough to get points. The Stamps pass rush gets home 4 times in that game. They generated 3 turnovers. They did not turn the ball over themselves. That's a recipe for a solid win, which is exactly what we saw. And I think it's probably a recipe for another win this week. Let's take the Calgary Stampeders on the road in Edmonton to get the win over the Elks. Looks like I'm taking all the favorites this week. But you know, I am going to hedge my bets here one more time. Even though last week was a blowout, I just don't kind of think that a blowout is going to happen 2 weeks in a row. The Elks are taking +6 here at home, and like I did last week, I'm going to bite on that number again. It just seems to be a lot of points to be giving up to a division opponent. So I'm going to take the +6, kind of hold my nose here because they just beat them by 21. But I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna bite on the +6, kind of hedging my bets there a little bit. Give me +6 on the Elks, but give me Calgary to win the game outright. Total in the game set at 49.5. I think we got to take another under on this one, and I think we're gonna go like a 24-21. Let's make this one a walk-off. 24-21 in favor of the Stamps. Calgary wins. Give me Edmonton plus the 6 points, and give me an under on the 49.5 point total. So, my CFL Week 14 fantasy roster, I don't actually have a completed roster for you. I've sat down and done a little bit. I know the locks. I know who's definitely going to be in there. Nathan Rourke is definitely going to be my fantasy quarterback this week. I think he's got a very high upside against Ottawa. I think it's going to be one of those like 400 total yard games, maybe 3 passing touchdowns and 1 on the ground, something like that. Like, I think it's going to be a big game for Rourke, so I'm going to spend the max money on Rourke, and I am going to stack him with one of his wide receivers. It's either going to be Stanley Berryhill or Keon Hatcher, kind of depending on the cost that I'm going to have to build the rest of my roster. The only other piece that I know is going to be in my roster is Alouettes running back Travis Thies. Again, I keep saying his name, and I know I'm saying it wrong because I say it multiple different ways in every video. He is going to be in my fantasy roster this week, and he might be in my fantasy roster for multiple weeks to come because he's minimum money. It's only $2,500. Did you notice the wasp? Sorry. $2,500 to get him in the roster. So 40 yards rushing and a catch, and he hits point value. So he's definitely going to be in my roster at least this week, if not multiple weeks to come. And I am going to lock in on the Hamilton Ticats on the defensive side. It's only $5,000 to get them on defense. And again, they're against an opponent who I don't know what they're going to show offensively, even though I do have one of their players in my fantasy roster at this point. I'm still going to go with the Ticats on the defensive side. The rest of my roster, I'll have to let you know down in the comments. There you have it, folks. Those are the picks and those are the plays for Week 14 in the CFL. We'll go over them here with you one more time. I've got 3 of the 4 road teams winning the games this week. The Lions beat the REDBLACKS. The Ticats beat the Alouettes. Winnipeg beats Saskatchewan in the Banjo Bowl. And Calgary gets their 2nd straight win over Edmonton. Against the spread, I'm taking 3 of the 4 favorites. I'm laying -4.5 on BC, laying -3.5 on Hamilton, and laying a single point on Winnipeg. I am taking the +6 with the Edmonton Elks. So Calgary wins, but Edmonton covers the +6. On the totals, under 55.5 in BC Ottawa, over 51.5 in Hamilton Montreal, over 52.5 in Winnipeg Saskatchewan, and under 49.5 in Calgary and Edmonton. That's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter. 2nd straight episode in the beautiful outdoors of Bridgewater, Nova Scotia. Hope you enjoyed the show. Enjoy the games in Week 14. We'll be back to a little more normalcy next week in Week 15.